So I grew up in an area on a Navajo reservation called Two Great Hills, New Mexico. So there, basically, it's a not desert, but it's a kind of combination of rocks, sand, and mountains just near the base of Two Great Hills. So a lot of it there, I think, what growing up was experience is that you value, everything that has life. Because growing up, we had, livestock on my father's side there with the sheep and then the horses. A lot of it, you appreciate how much things are worth and guaranteed, like how to appreciate everything that's just given to you. Because growing up, we grew up, traditional as well, going to various ceremonies, knowing the aspects of what, was considered sacred. So just knowing all those, we would say the foundations of being a Navajo or just anything in the way of life. We all have our interpretations, but that just basically helped myself growing up knowing that everything, does happen for a reason, and knowing that, all of these teaching does reflect, you as a person as well. Just knowing that all of those being brought up and then carrying on to now that being an adult, but also just to remember, reflect where you come from, how much, a person has grown. For me, school was a struggle only because it was new to me at a high school level, knowing that it was a college bound high school, only because the classes there were more rigorous. So I would say each class has taught me something because going from, Navajo government, US government, basically knowing the history from culture about our own Navajo people to the US government as well, just knowing that there's a huge difference in how it's taught from public school to a considered a private school, and then just anything from math courses, all of that was new to me, helping me understand the complexity of how math can get, and then from basically biology to chemistry, knowing that things do happen like for a reason, as far as anything that should occur within those areas. And then of course English, all of these, it was taught to where everything needs to be properly, worded, structured, research. So all of these, things in each class does carry on into everyday life, just knowing that everything does needs to be done a certain way. And just knowing that each class did teach, a foundation or a lesson as far as just reflecting back as who you are as a Navajo person, because the school I did go to was Navajo preparatory school, so a lot of it just had to intertwine of how Navajo philosophy and academics relate to one another. It's very busy. From every hour could be different or it is different. So for me, I'll handle a lot of new hire processing for full-time employees, and then as well as which involves conducting and scheduling the interviews, as well as just doing the selection process, working with the hiring managers or foremen, and then looking into benefits, going over that with new hires, processing any type of changes, and then of course working with workman's comp, and then as well as any type of disability if the employee should be injured, or go into areas of small investigations where there's some employee issues and conflicts. It's just a well versed responsibility within our HR department. So it just goes from day to day, hour to hour, reflecting something can come up at any time, because it does keep me very busy. So knowing that you're busy, while you're at work, sometimes you may have to stay later, but a lot of it, I think, is just going over benefits, giving employees an area that they may not be familiar with, which we do encounter a lot. That a lot of individuals are not familiar with, health insurance, life insurance, disability payments. So it's just knowing to give them an idea of what coverage they can have and how they can use it to their benefit. So currently, it's just going through, sessions as far as taking training and then taking the examination, just depending when it is scheduled. A lot of it just revolves around, you would say, employment law, just knowing how the do's and don'ts reflecting, your company or even within the US, and then they also have a tribal certification as well that revolves around, of course, for many tribes that have some form of government where that can also be used. I still see myself, working in the HR department, possibly, moving to a higher level, which I'm not sure where that would be, but just as long as I keep, growing within the HR field and then also to complete and further my education. So I'm currently enrolled in a doctorate program. So hopefully within the next, 2 or 3 years, this should be completed and I'll be Dr. Wilfred Jumbo. But that's a scenario, but it's always been my personal goal just to complete my education as soon as I can, and then hopefully, like I said, start a new career path, but to stay within the HR field. So for those would be, I guess, asking a lot of questions if you don't know anything to get everything clear, and it does contradict one another because growing up in, I would say, junior high, there was no such thing as a dumb question. But growing up and then moving on to high school and even college, and then continuing on with education, there are such things as dumb questions that our instructors and professors would refer to us, because a lot of it was when you're not paying attention. Is that when you ask a question when something had been over and you're not paying attention? So that's where they would reverse that area and be sure that you do pay attention, that you should be taking notes, and a lot of things just reflect around that. And then just to be sure that you're always mindful that you need to listen, and rather than being very directive, because it could also, be a weakness for some individuals, but also a, strength of many too.